hard to get the best finish you want when your walls are crumbling like this. Filler often won't stay in the hole as it gets covered in dust and grit and just pulls back away with the filler still stuck to the knife. First, you can gently scrape around the edges of the hole, just trying to take away any edges that are sticking out away from the surface. If you find too much plaster starts falling out, it's probably best to stop and move on to the next stage. Use a vacuum cleaner or dusting brush to remove the very loose sand and grit from around the hole. Don't get carried away because you may start pulling more plaster out. Now to seal the hole and stop it crumbling, I use SBR primer, that's my favourite. I find this the best, but you can use watered down PVA or even just use water if you really have to, but it won't do quite as good a job. The SBR has quite a thin consistency depending on the brand, but it is usually advisable to add water and mix it to use as a primer sealer. Use a small brush and mush it into the hole to make the dry plaster soak it all up. If some runs down the wall, it's probably best to wipe that away as it will likely show through the paint when you come to the painting stage. Once the primer's dry, you can see what a massive difference it makes to the surface, with the plaster nice and tight and nothing really crumbling away at all. Now go ahead and fill the hole. I prefer to use a powdered filler instead of a ready mixed filler, as it will set hard after a given time, whereas the ready mix tends to set as it dries out, which can be a problem time wise on any deeper holes. I find it sands down nicer too. As you fill the hole, try and push the filler out towards the edges initially to get it all bonded in and to avoid any air pockets, as these will just show as small holes when you come to sand it down. I keep working the filler until I leave it as even a coat as possible, leaving it a couple of millimeters proud of the rest of the surface for any shrinkage of the filler, and so we can hopefully sand a little bit back without having to do a second fill and get it nice and level. Once the filler is dry, it's time to rub the filler down level with the rest of the wall. If you're in a rush, you can always use a hairdryer to help draw the moisture out and allow things to dry more quickly. And definitely don't use a ready mix filler in this scenario, as you will form like a dry crust on the surface and might just pull that out. But again, this depends on the depth of the hole. You don't have to use an electric sander, you can use any of these types of sanders, even just a block of wood is fine, but I would try and use something that's flat generally for sanding down, just because if you just use a piece of sandpaper you can tend to rub away a bit too much where you're pushing with your fingers, where if it's on a block of wood or a sanding pad, it'll tend to be flat, and so it'll be a nice flat finish. Once sanded down, you can proceed with the painting. If you have bigger holes or even channels to fill in like these, you might want to watch this video here where I tackle those types of projects step by step.